For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council believed they had perfected engineering itself. Their starships were masterpieces of flawless symmetry, mathematical precision, and elegant design. Every bolt, every circuit, every reactor was built according to laws that had remained unchanged for millennia. Then humanity arrived. We looked at their perfect ships and saw weaknesses. We looked at their sacred doctrines and saw opportunities. While the Council worshipped order, humans mastered chaos. What happened next would force the entire galaxy to rewrite the laws of engineering forever. The perfect empire 1,000+ word script. For over 10,000 years, the Galactic Council ruled known space through a simple belief. Perfection was strength. Every member civilization accepted the same engineering doctrines. Every reactor followed identical principles. Every warship was designed according to mathematical standards developed by countless generations of scientists. The Council considered these standards sacred. Innovation still existed, but only within carefully controlled boundaries. No engineer was allowed to introduce instability into a system. No architect was permitted to sacrifice elegance for practicality. No scientist was encouraged to explore solutions considered inefficient by established doctrine. As a result, the Council built the most beautiful technology the galaxy had ever seen. Their starships looked like works of art. Their orbital stations resembled floating sculptures. Their cities glowed with symmetrical perfection visible from orbit. To the Council, engineering was not merely science. It was philosophy, it was culture, it was religion. For thousands of years, nobody questioned it. Why would they? The Council had never lost a major war. Every rival civilization eventually joined their alliance or disappeared beneath their economic dominance. Their fleets were larger. Their technology was superior. Their logistics networks stretched across thousands of star systems. The galaxy appeared stable, permanent, unbreakable. Then, humanity entered interstellar space. The first contact report immediately created confusion among Council analysts. Human ships looked wrong. BWONG. Council engineers studying the first human vessels believed their sensors were malfunctioning. Nothing about the ships made sense. The hull structures were asymmetrical. Backup systems existed inside backup systems. Power lines crossed through compartments in ways considered irrational. Critical components appeared scattered randomly throughout the vessel. One Council analyst famously described the design as an industrial accident somehow achieving faster-than-light travel. The report became legendary. Not because it was inaccurate, but because it was completely correct. Human engineers had never pursued perfection. They pursued survival. Throughout their history, humans learned engineering under extreme conditions: wars, natural disasters, economic collapses, resource shortages, emergency situations. Their technology evolved in environments where failure carried immediate consequences. As a result, humans developed a completely different philosophy. Perfection was fragile. Redundancy was strength. Flexibility was survival. Improvisation was power. When Council representatives visited Earth for the first time, they expected to teach humanity. Instead, they became horrified. Council engineers toured shipyards orbiting Earth. What they saw caused genuine panic. Human workers were modifying active spacecraft during construction. Engineers altered designs halfway through assembly. Different ship classes shared interchangeable components. Entire sections of vessels could be replaced using equipment from unrelated industries. Nothing followed Council standards. Nothing appeared optimized. Nothing looked elegant. Yet somehow everything worked. One visiting Council architect reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown after discovering that human cargo freighters used spare military reactor components because it was cheaper than manufacturing dedicated civilian systems. To humans, this was common sense. To the Council, it was technological heresy. The first debates began almost immediately. Council universities published papers criticizing human engineering practices. Experts predicted catastrophic failures. Scientific committees warned that humanity's chaotic methods would eventually destroy their civilization. Council media referred to human technology as primitive improvisation. The criticism intensified when humanity began exporting ships. Independent worlds purchased human vessels because they were cheaper, easier to repair, more adaptable more renditions. Council manufacturers grew concerned. Then they became afraid. Human ships continued operating in situations that should have destroyed them. Severe combat damage, reactor failures, navigation system collapses, environmental catastrophes. Human vessels survived, again and again. Council ships often possessed superior performance under ideal conditions, but real space was rarely ideal. Meteor impacts occurred. Systems malfunctioned. Pirates attacked. Accidents happened. And whenever chaos appeared, human engineering suddenly looked brilliant. The Council dismissed these incidents as statistical anomalies. They believed superior technology would eventually prevail. Then the expansion wars began. A newly discovered region beyond Council borders contained thousands of resource-rich systems. Multiple civilizations rushed to claim them. Competition rapidly escalated. Political tensions increased, trade routes became contested. Military deployments expanded. Within a decade, the largest conflict in modern galactic history erupted. The Great Galactic Expansion had begun. Council fleets entered the conflict with absolute confidence. Their warships represented the pinnacle of engineering. Perfect reactors, perfect weapons, perfect defenses, perfect logistics. Humanity entered the war with something very different. A fleet built by engineers who expected everything to go wrong. At first, Council admirals viewed human participation as irrelevant. Earth controlled relatively few systems. Its population was small compared to major powers. Its technology remained unconventional. Nobody expected humans to influence the war. That assumption would become one of the greatest mistakes in galactic history. Because the battlefield was not a laboratory. It was not an engineering symposium, it was chaos. And chaos happened to be humanity's natural environment. Even with been most carnage incidents, human vessels survived damage levels that should have destroyed them. Improvised repairs returned crippled ships to combat within hours. Destroyed components were replaced using salvaged enemy equipment. Entire fleets remained operational despite catastrophic logistical failures. The Council could not understand how. Their engineers searched desperately for explanations. Their scientists examined battle records. Their analysts reviewed sensor data. Every answer pointed toward the same uncomfortable conclusion. Human engineering wasn't flawed, it was optimized for reality. And reality was messy. Very messy. The first major shock arrived during the Battle of Veyron Pass. A confrontation that would permanently change the galaxy's understanding of engineering. There, a small human task force faced overwhelming enemy forces. According to every known calculation, humanity should have been annihilated. Instead, the impossible happened. And when the battle ended, the Galactic Council would begin asking a terrifying question. What if perfection had been the wrong answer all along? The Battle of Veyron Pass was never supposed to become famous. According to every military prediction, it was expected to be a routine victory, a minor engagement. A footnote in the history books, nothing more. The Veyron system sat at the center of several newly discovered hyperspace corridors connecting dozens of resource-rich star systems. Whoever controlled the pass controlled trade, logistics, and military movement across an entire sector. That made it valuable, extremely valuable. By the third year of the Great Galactic Expansion, rival powers had already begun fighting over the region. The Council dispatched one of its most respected fleets, 42 state-of-the-art warships, 8 battle carriers, hundreds of escort vessels, thousands of fighters. The fleet was considered nearly invincible. Its commander, High Admiral Srakan, was regarded one of the greatest strategic minds in Council history. His ships represented engineering perfection. Every vessel was optimized according to 10,000 years of military doctrine. Every system functioned flawlessly. Every crew member trusted the calculations. The enemy force facing them was estimated to be significantly weaker. Victory appeared inevitable. Then, humanity volunteered assistance. The Council reluctantly accepted. Not because they trusted humans, but because additional ships were always useful. The human contribution looked laughable compared to the Council fleet. Only 12 warships arrived. Most were visibly older designs. Several carried battle damage from previous engagements. One cruiser had a replacement engine section attached from an entirely different class of ship. Council officers stared in disbelief. Some assumed the humans had sent reserve units by mistake. Others wondered if Earth had misunderstood the assignment. Admiral Sorokin himself reportedly asked, "Are these truly your frontline vessels?" The human commander smiled. "These are the ones that still fly." Council officers thought it was a joke. The human crew did not laugh. That should have been the first warning. As the combined fleet entered Veyron Pass, sensors detected unexpected enemy activity. The opposing coalition had anticipated the attack. Instead of retreating, they had prepared an enormous ambush. Hundreds of warships emerged from hidden positions, minefields activated. Electronic warfare systems flooded communication channels. Long-range artillery platforms opened fire. Within minutes, the battle transformed into chaos. Exactly the kind of situation the Council hated. The opening attack devastated Council formations. Several battleships lost navigation systems. Carrier groups became separated. Communication relays malfunctioned under electronic interference. Perfect formations collapsed. For the first time in decades, Admiral Sorokin found himself fighting without reliable information. Council doctrine depended heavily on coordination. Every vessel functioned as part of a larger system. When communication broke down, efficiency dropped dramatically. Then things became worse. Enemy forces targeted critical reactor nodes. The Council's symmetrical ship designs contain predictable structural layouts. Sophisticated, targeting computers quickly identified weak points. Several Council cruisers exploded within the first hour. Another carrier suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. More ships followed. Panic began spreading through command networks. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Meanwhile, the human fleet behaved strangely, very strangely. Instead of maintaining formation, human commanders immediately scattered their ships. Council officers initially believed they were retreating. They weren't. Human vessels began operating independently. Each ship adapted to local battlefield conditions. Captains made decisions without waiting for authorization. Crews improvised constantly. One destroyer lost its primary weapons and immediately converted cargo launch systems into missile batteries. Another vessel suffered severe shield damage and started using industrial mining lasers as defensive weapons. A cruiser, whose targeting systems failed, switched entirely to visual firing solutions. None of this existed within Council doctrine, yet somehow it worked. The enemy struggled to predict human behavior. Council ships followed established patterns. Human ships followed opportunities. The difference became increasingly important. As the battle intensified, one particular incident changed everything. A Council battleship named Radiant Truth suffered catastrophic damage. Enemy fire destroyed its propulsion systems. Communication arrays were disabled. Half the ship lost power. According to Council regulations, the vessel was effectively dead. Standard procedure required evacuation. Human Commander Marcus Holle disagreed. He ordered 3 nearby human ships to assist. Council officers protested immediately. The battleship was beyond saving. The calculations were clear. The probabilities were undeniable. Marcus Holle ignored them. Instead of abandoning the vessel, human engineers boarded it. What happened next shocked everyone. Human technicians bypassed damaged systems, rerouted power lines, connected emergency generators, removed safety restrictions, cannibalized components from multiple ships. Within 3 hours, the supposedly destroyed battleship returned to combat, not fully repaired. Not elegant or not pretty, but functional. Council observers could barely believe what they were seeing. A vessel declared dead by every expert was fighting again. The enemy couldn't believe it either. Their battle plans relied on destroying key assets. They expected losses to remain losses. Humanity had just changed the rules. Then came the moment that would make Veyron Pass legendary. Enemy forces concentrated their attack against the center of the combined fleet. A massive assault formation advanced toward Council. Command Chief successful the battle, be lost. Council commanders prepared for a desperate last stand. Human engineers saw something else, opportunity. Earlier in the battle, dozens of destroyed vessels had scattered debris throughout the pass. Council doctrine viewed debris as a navigational hazard. Humans viewed debris as ammunition. Commander Holly proposed an outrageous plan. So outrageous that several council officers believed he was joking. He wanted to weaponize the battlefield itself. Using modified tractor systems, human ships began gathering wreckage. Destroyed hull fragments, broken reactor casings, armor plating. Massive structural beams, thousands of tons of debris. Engineers then attached emergency propulsion units, improvised guidance systems, repurposed mining thrusters. The result looked ridiculous, a collection of flying junk. A giant cloud of scrap metal that council officers were horrified. Human engineers were excited. When the enemy assault entered range, the trap activated. Thousands of debris fragments accelerated simultaneously. The battlefield transformed into a storm of high-velocity metal. Enemy formations shattered instantly. Shields designed to stop energy weapons struggled against unpredictable kinetic impacts. Warships collided. Navigation systems failed. Defensive formations collapsed. Entire squadrons disappeared beneath clouds of weaponized wreckage. The effect was devastating and completely unexpected. No military doctrine in the galaxy contained countermeasures for an attack that essentially turned garbage into strategic weaponry. Enemy commanders spent precious minutes trying to understand what was happening. By the time they adapted, it was too late. Human ships exploited the confusion. Council forces regained their momentum. The assault broke apart, then it collapsed entirely. Hours later, the enemy fleet retreated. The Battle of Veyron Pass was over. The combined fleet had survived. Against all expectations, against all calculations, against all doctrine, news spread rapidly throughout the galaxy. Initially, council media focused on the victory itself. Then analysts began reviewing battle records. Questions emerged, difficult questions, uncomfortable questions. Why had human ships survived conditions that crippled council vessels? Why had improvised repairs succeeded? Why had weaponized debris worked? Why did flexibility repeatedly outperform perfection? The answers threatened centuries of established belief. Council academies launched investigations. Engineering boards assembled emergency conferences. Military strategists reviewed thousands of combat reports. Again and again, the same conclusion appeared. Human systems weren't optimized for ideal circumstances. They were optimized for failure, for chaos, for disaster, for reality. And reality had just defeated perfection. Across the galaxy, young engineers began studying human designs. Military commanders requested human advisors. Independent worlds started purchasing Earth-built vessels in record numbers. The council leadership grew increasingly nervous. Because Veyron Pass wasn't just a military victory, it was a philosophical disaster. For 10,000 years, the council had taught that perfection created strength. At Veyron Pass, humanity demonstrated something terrifying. Strength came from adaptation, and adaptation belonged to humans. What nobody realized was that Veyron Pass represented only the beginning. Because hidden deep inside council archives A group of senior engineers had already started a secret project. A project designed to study human methods. A project that would accidentally uncover the greatest engineering weakness in Council history. A weakness humanity would soon turn into a weapon. And when that discovery reached the battlefield, the entire galaxy would change forever. The Battle of Veyron Pass changed more than military strategy. It changed how the galaxy thought. For the first time in thousands of years, engineers across the Galactic Council began questioning doctrines that had once been considered untouchable. Universities debated human design philosophy. Military academies analyzed human battlefield improvisation. Industrial corporations secretly purchased human technical manuals. The Council publicly dismissed humanity's success as an anomaly. Privately, they were terrified. Because deep inside the Council's engineering institutions, a dangerous realization was beginning to spread. Humanity might not have gotten lucky. Humanity might actually be right. To investigate the growing controversy, the Council established a classified research initiative known as Project Harmony. Officially, its purpose was simple. Study human engineering methods. Identify their strengths. Adapt useful concepts into Council technology. The project recruited the galaxy's brightest scientists. Thousands of engineers joined the effort. Advanced simulation facilities were constructed. Entire fleets of captured human vessels were purchased for analysis. At first, researchers expected easy answers. They assumed human systems survived because of excessive redundancy. More backup generators, more spare components, more replacement parts. Simple, predictable, harmless. But as the investigation continued, the evidence pointed somewhere unexpected. Humanity's advantage wasn't merely redundancy, it was decentralization. Council ships relied on centralized control. Human ships distributed responsibility everywhere. Council vessels contained primary reactor control systems. Human vessels contained dozens. Council navigation depended on a few critical computers. Human navigation systems could function through hundreds of independent nodes. Council warships operated like precision machines. Human warships operated like living organisms. That distinction changed everything. A machine could be perfect. A living organism could survive. Project Harmony began running battlefield simulations. Thousands of them, millions eventually. Again and again, the results produced the same uncomfortable conclusion. Under ideal conditions, Council ships remained superior, faster, more efficient, more elegant. But ideal conditions rarely existed during war. The moment chaos entered the equation, human systems became increasingly dominant. Researchers became alarmed. Not because humanity possessed superior technology. Because they possessed superior resilience. The difference was profound. Then one scientist made a discovery that changed the project forever. Senior systems architect Varek Tull spent months comparing battle damage reports. He analyzed thousands of engagements spanning centuries. His goal was simple. Identify recurring failure patterns. What he found shocked him. The Council's greatest strength had created its greatest weakness. Standardization. For 10,000 years, every Council civilization followed identical engineering doctrines, identical safety principles, identical structural mathematics, identical design assumptions. The result created compatibility, efficiency, predictability. But it also created vulnerability. Because every ship shared the same fundamental weaknesses. Every reactor followed similar layouts. Every command center occupied predictable locations. Every structural support system obeyed identical principles. An enemy capable of understanding one Council vessel could understand them all. Varek Tull immediately realized the implications. Humanity had already noticed. At Veyron Pass, enemy targeting systems identified reactor nodes with remarkable accuracy. Why? Because Council designs were predictable. Perfectly predictable. Predictability created weakness. The discovery terrified him. It should have terrified everyone. Instead, many council leaders rejected the findings. The implications were too dangerous. Admitting the truth would undermine 10,000 years of engineering philosophy. Political leaders dismissed the research. Military officials questioned the data. Corporate interests resisted change. Project Harmony received orders to remain confidential, but secrets rarely stay hidden, especially when humans become involved. Through trade agreements and military cooperation, Earth had gained access to increasing amounts of Council technology. Human engineers loved studying foreign systems. Not because they wanted to copy them, because they wanted to understand them. And once humans understood something, they usually found ways to break it. One human engineer in particular became fascinated by Council reactor architecture. Her name was Dr. Elena Ward. Unlike many military strategists, Elena cared little about politics. She cared about systems, patterns, connections, weaknesses. When she reviewed captured Council schematics, she noticed something strange. Every design looked different. Yet somehow they felt identical. The details varied. The principles never changed. It reminded her of a puzzle, a very large puzzle. And Elena Ward loved puzzles. For months, she assembled data, reactor blueprints, maintenance records, battle damage reports, manufacturing standards. Thousands of documents, then she saw it, the pattern, a hidden assumption embedded across every Council engineering doctrine. An assumption nobody questioned because everyone accepted it as truth. Council engineers believed symmetry increased stability. Everything run that reactor cores. Power distribution, structural supports that shield networks. Weapons systems, the philosophy influenced everything. Human engineers had never shared that belief. As a result, Elena noticed vulnerabilities invisible to Council designers. Certain stress patterns concentrated around symmetrical structures. Energy loads distributed predictably. Structural failures propagated along mathematically elegant pathways. In theory, these systems were beautiful. In practice, they created exploitable weaknesses. The realization kept Elena awake for 3 nights. When she finally presented her findings, military officials initially laughed. Then they reviewed the data. Then they stopped laughing. Because the evidence was overwhelming, human simulations demonstrated something extraordinary. Under specific conditions, a relatively small amount of force could trigger cascading failures throughout Council vessels. Not through brute strength, through structural manipulation. By attacking the assumptions behind the design itself. The implications were staggering. Humanity had discovered a way to weaponize engineering philosophy, not weapons, not fleets, not technology, ideas. Ideas were far more dangerous. Earth's military leadership immediately classified the research. Only a handful of individuals received access. Strategists debated what to do next. Some advocated secrecy, but others demanded immediate implementation. One thing became clear. If war continued escalating, humanity possessed a potentially decisive advantage. Meanwhile, the conflict across the frontier worsened. New offensives erupted. Supply routes collapsed. Entire systems changed hands. The great galactic expansion was becoming increasingly brutal. Losses mounted on every side. Council fleets continued relying on traditional doctrine. Human commanders continued adapting. The gap widened. Then an emergency transmission arrived from the frontier. A major Council fortress world had come under attack. Enemy armadas surrounded the system. Defensive fleets were overwhelmed. Reinforcements remained days away. The fortress contained critical shipyards, manufacturing centers, strategic resources. If it fell, the entire sector could collapse. Military planners rushed to develop solutions. Council commanders proposed conventional strategies. Human engineers proposed something else. Something impossible. Something insane. Something that directly exploited the flaw Elena Ward had discovered. For the first time in history, humanity would attempt to destroy an enemy fortress not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding. And if the plan succeeded, the galaxy would witness the birth of a terrifying new form of warfare. A form of warfare where engineering itself became the weapon. The fortress world of Arkanis Prime had never been conquered. For nearly 4,000 years, it stood as one of the Galactic Council's most heavily defended strategic strongholds. Entire generations of military officers studied its defenses, its orbital rings, its planetary shield network, its autonomous defense platforms, its colossal shipyards. Everything about Arkanis Prime represented the highest achievement of Council engineering. The fortress world of Arkanis Prime had never been conquered. For nearly 4,000 years, it stood as one of the Galactic Council's most heavily defended strategic strongholds. Entire generations of military officers studied its defenses, its orbital rings, its planetary shield network, its autonomous defense platforms, its colossal shipyards. Everything about Arkanis Prime represented the highest achievement of Council engineering. Military analysts often described it using a simple phrase: unbreakable. The fortress sat at the center of a critical industrial corridor. Hundreds of shipyards surrounded the planet. Massive orbital factories produced warships around the clock. Entire fleets depended on its manufacturing output. Without Arkanis Prime, the Council's war effort would suffer catastrophic damage. That was precisely why enemy forces targeted it. Over 200 hostile warships surrounded the system. Thousands of strike craft continuously attacked defensive positions. Supply lines had been severed. Communications were unreliable. The situation grew worse every day. Inside the Fortress Command Center, Council officers desperately searched for solutions. Every conventional strategy failed. Every simulation predicted defeat. Even if reinforcements arrived, the enemy would likely destroy critical infrastructure before help could intervene. The Council needed a miracle. Instead, they got humanity. When the emergency request reached Earth, military leaders immediately assembled a joint task force. Human admirals reviewed the situation. Engineers examined defensive schematics. Strategists analyzed enemy fleet formations. The conclusion was obvious. A direct assault would fail. The enemy possessed overwhelming numerical superiority. No fleet could simply fight through the blockade. Then Dr. Elena Ward entered the briefing room. The same engineer who had discovered the hidden weakness inside Council design philosophy. She listened quietly, studied the projections, reviewed the orbital defense architecture. Then she asked a question nobody expected. What powers the shield network? The room became silent. Several officers exchanged confused looks. The answer seemed obvious. Massive planetary fusion reactors, the largest ever constructed. Elena nodded. Then she asked another question. How are those reactors synchronized? Again, the answer appeared simple. Through a perfectly balanced energy distribution system designed according to standard Council engineering doctrine. Elena smiled. That answer was exactly what she hoped to hear. Because she had already spent months studying those systems. She understood something the Council still refused to accept. Perfection created dependency. Dependency created vulnerability. The planetary shield wasn't merely powerful. It was predictable. Every reactor synchronized according to precise mathematical relationships. Every energy transfer followed identical patterns. Every stabilization process relied on perfect balance. The system functioned beautifully. Until something disrupted that balance, human simulations suggested a shocking possibility. The shield could potentially destabilize itself. Not through brute force, through resonance. By introducing carefully calculated disturbances into the synchronization network, the entire shield architecture might begin fighting itself. The concept sounded absurd, even dangerous. Several Council officers immediately objected. The calculations contradicted centuries of accepted engineering theory. Elena calmly presented her data, then she showed simulation results. The room became very quiet. Because the simulations worked, again and again. Thousands of times, the weakness was real. The challenge now became implementation. How could they introduce resonance disruptions into a fortress protected by one of the largest defensive systems in the galaxy? A direct attack remained impossible. That was when a human naval officer proposed something ridiculous. Naturally, everyone loved it. The plan involved scrap metal. Lots of scrap metal. Human fleets had developed a reputation since Veyron Pass. Whenever they lacked proper equipment, they invented alternatives. This situation would be no different. Engineers rapidly modified dozens of civilian cargo vessels, mining transports, salvage barges, construction platforms, ships never intended for combat. Each vessel carried specialized resonance transmitters designed by Elena's team. The devices themselves were harmless, tiny compared to military weapons. But they didn't need destructive power, they only needed precision. The task force departed within hours. Council commanders remained skeptical. The operation sounded less like military strategy and more like experimental engineering. Human commanders considered that a compliment. 3 days later, the task force entered Arkanis Prime's system. Enemy sensors immediately detected them. Hostile fleets moved to intercept, exactly as expected. The cargo vessels scattered in every direction, but to enemy commanders, it looked like panic. Disorganized retreat, cowardice. They couldn't have been more wrong. The cargo ships followed carefully planned trajectories. Each vessel approached a different section of the planetary defense grid. Enemy warships pursued aggressively. Meanwhile, the actual human combat fleet remained hidden beyond sensor range. Everything depended on timing. For 6 tense hours, the operation unfolded. Cargo vessels dodged attacks. Pilots maneuvered through debris fields. Several ships were destroyed. Others barely survived, but enough reached their assigned positions. Then Elena Ward gave the order. Activate. Across the system, dozens of resonance transmitters came online simultaneously. Nothing happened, at least initially. Enemy commanders laughed. Council officers looked nervous. Human engineers watched their monitors and waited. 30 seconds later, subtle fluctuations appeared inside the shield network. 1 minute later, synchronization delays increased. 3 minutes later, reactor balancing systems began compensating. 5 minutes later, emergency stabilization protocols activated. The fortress itself wasn't under attack. Yet its systems suddenly behaved as though they were. Energy surges moved unpredictably through the network. Automated controllers attempted corrections. Those corrections created additional imbalances, which triggered more corrections. A chain reaction emerged. The shield began fighting itself, exactly as Elena predicted. For the first time in its history, Arkanis Prime's planetary defense network entered critical instability. Enemy commanders realized something was wrong. By then it was too late. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Hundreds of warships appeared behind the blockade, not because they overpowered enemy sensors. Because the destabilized shield network disrupted battlefield awareness. Human forces attacked immediately. Enemy formations struggled to respond. Communication systems malfunctioned. Targeting arrays lost synchronization. Command structures fractured. The battle descended into chaos. And chaos always favored humanity. Human captains adapted continuously, improvised constantly, exploited every opportunity. Meanwhile, enemy commanders fought an increasingly impossible battle, not only against human fleets, against confusion itself. Then the planetary shield collapsed, not permanently, only briefly, but briefly was enough. Council defense platforms launched thousands of missiles. Orbital shipyards activated reserve weapon systems. Ground-based artillery joined the battle. Suddenly the attackers found themselves trapped between two enemies, the fortress and humanity. The outcome became inevitable. Within hours, hostile forces began retreating. By the end of the day, the blockade was broken. Arkanis Prime survived. Celebrations erupted across Council space. Military leaders praised the victory. Politicians declared it historic. Engineers studied every detail. Because something extraordinary had happened. Humanity had defeated a superior force, without superior firepower. They had won through understanding. By identifying assumptions hidden inside Council engineering philosophy. By recognizing weaknesses invisible to those who created them. The implications terrified many Council leaders. Because if humans could find flaws inside the galaxy's greatest fortress, what else could they find? Inside classified facilities, Project Harmony expanded dramatically. Emergency funding arrived. Additional scientists joined. Political resistance weakened. The evidence could no longer be ignored. Human engineering wasn't primitive. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't accidental. It represented an entirely different way of understanding reality. And every new discovery revealed the same disturbing truth. The Council's greatest strengths were becoming liabilities. Unfortunately for them, humanity was only beginning to explore those weaknesses. Far beyond the frontier, another battle was approaching. A battle involving the largest fleet ever assembled during the Great Galactic Expansion. A battle where humanity would unveil a weapon so unconventional that entire civilizations would refuse to believe the reports. Until they saw it themselves. After the victory at Arkanis Prime, the galaxy stopped laughing at human engineers. That didn't mean they understood them. Far from Italiano. Council admirals still struggled to predict human behavior. Scientists still argued over human design philosophy. Politicians still hoped humanity's success represented a temporary anomaly. But one thing had changed. Nobody underestimated humans anymore. Unfortunately, that realization arrived too late. Because while the Council debated theories, humanity was already preparing something unprecedented. Something that would completely redefine modern warfare. The project began inside a remote shipyard orbiting a barren mining world known as Helios 9. At first glance, the facility looked abandoned. Old freighters drifted through dry docks. Damaged cruisers sat partially dismantled. Scrap metal floated everywhere. Council observers, who visited the station, initially assumed it was a recycling yard. Technically, they weren't wrong. But they weren't entirely correct either. Human engineers called it Project Phoenix. The Council would eventually call it a nightmare. The idea emerged from a simple observation. Throughout the Great Galactic Expansion, thousands of ships had been destroyed. Battlefields contained mountains of wreckage. Broken reactors. Damaged hull sections. Abandoned weapons systems. Entire fleets of ruined vessels drifted through contested regions. Council doctrine viewed these remains as waste. Humanity saw resources. Every destroyed ship contained useful components. Armor plating. Thrusters. Sensors. Power systems. Computers. Structural supports. Nothing truly needed to be discarded. Human engineers began recovering everything. Salvage operations expanded rapidly. Entire industrial fleets collected battlefield debris. Shipyards dismantled wrecks around the clock. Mountains of scrap accumulated across human territory. Then somebody asked a dangerous question. What if we rebuilt everything? Not individually. Structural supports. Nothing truly needed to be discarded. Human engineers began recovering everything. Salvage operations expanded rapidly. Entire industrial fleets collected battlefield debris. Shipyards dismantled wrecks around the clock. Mountains of scrap accumulated across human territory. Then somebody asked a dangerous question. What if we rebuilt everything? Not individually. Together, the answer became Project Phoenix. Instead of constructing traditional warships, engineers combined salvaged components from hundreds of different vessels. Council parts. Human parts. Alien parts. Military equipment. Civilian equipment. Mining equipment, industrial machinery. Anything useful. The resulting ships looked absurd to were identical. Some carried 5 different classes of engines. Others contained weapons originally designed for entirely unrelated purposes. Several vessels appeared assembled by people who had completely ignored conventional engineering. Which, ironically, was exactly what happened. The Council considered the designs impossible. Human engineers considered them Tuesday. The first prototype launched 6 months after Veyron Pass. It immediately terrified everyone, not because it was powerful, because it shouldn't have worked, yet somehow it did. The vessel survived simulations that destroyed conventional warships. It remained operational despite catastrophic damage. Entire sections could be removed without disabling critical functions. The ship adapted continuously, like a living organism. Project Phoenix expanded overnight. 100 vessels entered servants. The fleet became known as the Scrapfleet. The name started as an insult. Humans adopted it proudly. Across the galaxy, military analysts watched in confusion. Traditional intelligence methods stopped working. Enemy commanders relied on recognition. Identify a ship. Understand its capabilities. Predict its behavior. Human Scrapfleet vessels destroyed that approach. Every ship was different. Every vessel possessed unique strengths, unique weaknesses, unique modifications. Combat predictions became impossible. The problem grew worse when the largest offensive of the war began. The enemy coalition assembled an enormous armada. More than 3,000 warships, hundreds of carriers, tens of thousands of strike craft. The largest invasion force ever recorded. Their objective was simple. Destroy humanity's frontier colonies, crush Earth's growing influence. End the human problem permanently. Council leadership panicked. Many believed defeat was inevitable. No defensive fleet possessed sufficient numbers. No fortress could withstand such an assault. No reinforcement force could arrive in time. Human commanders reviewed the intelligence reports. Then they smiled. Because they had been waiting for exactly this situation. A massive fleet looked intimidating. But massive fleets depended on coordination. Comunicación. Predictability. The larger the force became, the more fragile those requirements grew. Human engineers understood fragility. They specialized in it. The Scrapfleet received deployment orders. Thousands of unconventional vessels departed Helios 9. Observers throughout Council space watched the mobilization with disbelief. The fleet looked ridiculous. A chaotic collection of mismatched ships. Asymmetrical hulls. Different engine signatures. Visible repair patches. Improvised weapon mounts. Nothing about it appeared professional. Enemy commanders laughed when they saw reconnaissance images. Several intelligence reports concluded humanity had exhausted its industrial capacity. They assumed Earth was desperate. They assumed the Scrapfleet represented humanity's final gamble. For once, human engineers hoped they would keep believing that. The invasion began 3 weeks later. Enemy forces entered the frontier region in overwhelming numbers. System after system fell. Defensive lines collapsed. Retreat orders spread across multiple sectors. Everything proceeded exactly as expected. Then the Scrapfleet appeared. The first battle occurred near the mining colonies of Draconis Reach. Enemy commanders anticipated an easy victory. Instead, confusion erupted immediately. Human vessels behaved unpredictably. Ships that appeared crippled suddenly accelerated. Cargo transports revealed hidden missile batteries. Salvage vessels deployed combat drones. Mining ships used industrial excavation lasers against enemy shields. Every engagement produced new surprises. Enemy tactical computers failed repeatedly. The software simply couldn't categorize human vessels. No known doctrine applied. No recognizable patterns existed. The invasion slowed, then it stalled. Then it slots off seeps. The Scrapfleet attacked from unexpected directions. Modified civilian vessels infiltrated logistics routes. Hybrid cruisers ambushed reinforcement convoys. Improvised carriers launched drone swarms from cargo compartments. Every battle became a puzzle. Every puzzle favored humanity. In waiting months, the Majbigres losses. Enemy admirals grew increasingly frustrated. Their superior numbers achieved little. Their advanced weapons delivered inconsistent results. Their carefully planned strategies collapsed under relentless unpredictability. Then came the battle that changed everything, the Battle of Black Horizon. A confrontation involving nearly 5,000 ships. The largest fleet engagement in modern galactic history. Both sides understood its importance. Victory could determine the future of the war. Defeat could reshape the balance of power forever. As fleets gathered near Black Horizon, tension spread across the galaxy. Billions watched live military broadcasts. Political leaders monitored developments around the clock. Scientists studied incoming data. Engineers prepared emergency reports. Everyone expected history. Nobody expected what humanity had planned. Because hidden within the Scrapfleet was a secret project. A project so unconventional that even many human admirals didn't know it existed. A weapon created entirely from lessons learned at Veyron Pass. A weapon designed not to destroy ships, but to destroy certainty itself. And when Black Horizon erupted into war, the galaxy would witness the most unbelievable engineering achievement ever created by human hands. The Black Horizon system was unlike any battlefield the galaxy had ever seen. At the edge of explored space, a dying star cast long shadows across a region filled with shattered moons, asteroid fields, and ancient gravitational anomalies. For centuries, navigators avoided the area. Military planners hated it. Engineers feared it. Humanity loved it. Because Black Horizon was chaos. And chaos had become humanity's greatest ally. As the largest fleets ever assembled converged on the system, billions across the galaxy watched with anticipation. Over 5,000 warships entered the region. Thousands more remained in reserve. Entire civilizations suspended normal operations to monitor the battle. The outcome would determine the future of the great galactic expansion. Victory could reshape galactic power. Defeat could destroy empires. The enemy coalition arrived first. Their formation stretched millions of kilometers across space. Massive battleships occupied the center. Carrier groups protected the flanks. Heavy artillery vessels remained behind defensive screens. Everything followed established doctrine. Everything looked organized, efficient, predictable, beautiful. Then the human fleet arrived, and immediately ruined the symmetry. The Scrapfleet emerged from hyperspace in hundreds of scattered groups. No obvious formation existed. No recognizable battle line appeared. Ships arrived from different directions. Different altitudes, different vectors. Council observers watching the deployment became confused. Enemy commanders became confident. Humanity looked disorganized. Again. The enemy believed they had seen this before again. Andon se moridinders. Because hidden throughout the Scrapfleet was humanity's newest creation, Project Chimera. A classified engineering program so secret that most fleet officers knew nothing about it. The project had originated after Veyron Pass. Human engineers studied one critical lesson. The enemy depended on certainty. Council fleets depended on certainty. Military doctrine depended on certainty. Everything depended on the assumption that reality behaved predictably. Project Chimera was designed to destroy that assumption. Instead of creating a new weapon, human engineers built something far stranger. Adaptive battlefield architecture. Entire ships capable of changing operational roles during combat. Cruisers transforming into carriers. Cargo vessels becoming missile platforms. Repair ships becoming electronic warfare centers. Fleet structures continuously reorganizing in real time. To the enemy, it would appear as if ships changed identities during battle, which was essentially true. The concept horrified traditional military strategists. Human engineers loved it immediately. As Black Horizon entered combat range, the first phase began. Enemy targeting systems locked onto priority vessels. Threat assessments generated attack solutions. Command algorithms distributed firing assignments. Everything functioned perfectly, then Project Chimera activated. Across the battlefield, hundreds of human ships reconfigured simultaneously. Cargo modules detached, weapon systems relocated, drone bays expanded. Sensor arrays unfolded. Entire vessel signatures changed. Enemy tactical computers suddenly received contradictory information. Ships identified as freighters became combat carriers. Support vessels transformed into missile cruisers. Targets previously considered low priority became major threats. Command networks flooded with warnings. Analysis systems began failing. For the first time in recorded history, a military AI requested clarification from its operators. The battlefield stopped making sense. Exactly as planned. Human commanders immediately exploited the confusion. Fast attack groups penetrated defensive gaps. Drone swarms overwhelmed sensor networks. Electronic warfare ships injected false battlefield data into enemy systems. Information itself became a weapon. The battle intensified rapidly. Massive exchanges of fire illuminated space. Entire squadrons disappeared beneath waves of missiles. Explosions stretched across millions of kilometers. Yet despite the scale, something unusual happened. The enemy struggled to establish battlefield awareness. Every report contradicted another report, every tactical prediction failed. Fleet commanders could no longer determine which human vessels represented genuine threats. The uncertainty spread like a virus. Then, humanity unleashed Phase 2, the Ghost Network. Years earlier, human engineers had noticed a recurring weakness in advanced military systems. The more sophisticated a targeting network became, the more dependent it became on information. Corrupt the information. Corrupt the decision-making process. The Ghost Network existed for exactly that purpose. Thousands of autonomous drones hidden throughout the battlefield activated simultaneously. Each drone projected false sensor signatures. Fake warships appeared. Fake fleets emerged. Fake reinforcements entered combat. Enemy sensors suddenly detected impossible numbers of targets. Entire armadas seemed to appear from nowhere. Some commanders believed they were facing 3 human fleets. Others believed they were facing 10. Nobody knew the truth. Even worse, every sensor system reported different results. Panic spread through command channels. Orders contradicted each other. Fleet movements became increasingly chaotic. Meanwhile, human commanders possessed complete knowledge of the deception. To them, the battlefield remained clear. To the enemy, reality itself became unreliable. The effects were devastating. Several enemy formations accidentally fired upon friendly ships. Carrier groups retreated from non-existent threats. Artillery platforms wasted ammunition targeting phantom fleets. Entire battle groups abandoned strategic positions because they believed themselves surrounded. Human engineers watched the chaos unfold from command centers. Many struggled to believe it worked so well. They expected disruption. They hadn't expected psychological collapse. The enemy possessed superior numbers, superior resources, superior industrial capacity. Yet they were losing a battle against uncertainty. Then came the moment that would make Black Horizon legendary, the Coalition's flagship. The massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. One of the largest warships ever constructed. Nearly 30 kilometers long, protected by dozens of shield layers. Armed with weapons capable of destroying moons. The vessel served as the nerve center of the invasion. Its destruction could end the battle. Unfortunately, destroying it directly appeared impossible. Most commanders focused on avoiding it. Human engineers focused on studying it. Because they had discovered something interesting. The Eternal Dominion embodied every principle of traditional Council engineering. Perfect symmetry, perfect optimization, perfect predictability. And therefore, perfect vulnerability, Months earlier, Elena Ward's team had identified a hidden structural resonance inside the vessel's shield architecture. The Flaw remained harmless under normal circumstances, but Black Horizon was not normal. As the battle raged, specialized human vessels quietly moved into position. They weren't armed with massive weapons. They carried resonance projectors, advanced descendants of the technology used at Arkanis Prime. The devices activated, invisible waves propagated through space. At first, nothing happened. Then, tiny fluctuations appeared within the Dreadnought's shield network. Automated systems compensated, exactly as expected. The compensations created additional imbalances, exactly as predicted. The process accelerated. Faster, until suddenly, the eternal Dominion shields collapsed, not because humanity overpowered them, because the shields dismantled themselves. For several seconds, one of the strongest warships in the galaxy became vulnerable. Human commanders didn't hesitate. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously, missiles or ALGUNS, plasma batteries. Drone strikes, everything. The barrage struck the exposed flagship. Explosions erupted across its hull. Massive sections disappeared beneath fire and debris. The ship survived. Barely. But the damage shattered command operations. Enemy coordination collapsed instantly. Retreat orders spread throughout the coalition fleet. Within hours, the invasion force began withdrawing. Black Horizon belonged to humanity. The impossible had happened. A smaller fleet had defeated a superior armada. Not through greater firepower, not through superior technology, through superior adaptation. Across the galaxy, military academies entered crisis mode. Engineering institutions rewrote entire curricula. Council leaders demanded explanations. Because Black Horizon proved something terrifying. Humanity wasn't winning despite its unconventional engineering. Humanity was winning because of it. And hidden inside Earth's research facilities, engineers were already developing the next evolution of their ideas. A project so ambitious that many scientists considered it madness. A project designed to create something no civilization had ever attempted before. A fleet that could evolve during war itself. And if successful, the balance of power across the galaxy would change forever. The victory at Black Horizon sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Entire civilizations struggled to understand what had happened. Military experts analyzed battle recordings frame by frame. Scientists reviewed sensor logs. Engineers dissected every known human innovation. The conclusion remained the same. Humanity had changed warfare. Again. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council believed superiority came from creating perfect systems. Humanity believed something very different. No system was perfect, no design was final, no solution lasted forever. Everything could improve, everything could adapt, everything could evolve. That philosophy gave birth to the most ambitious engineering project in human history, Project Evolution. Even inside Earth's military, only a handful of people knew it existed. The program had one objective: create a fleet capable of learning from war itself, not after battles, during them. The idea sounded impossible. Many scientists considered it dangerous. Some called it insane. Human engineers called it interesting. The project began shortly after Veyron Pass. Researchers noticed a recurring pattern. Every battle taught valuable lessons. Every engagement generated new information. Every victory revealed opportunities. Every failure revealed weaknesses. The problem was time. Traditional militaries required months or years to implement lessons learned. Human engineers wanted something faster, much faster. They wanted ships capable of adapting immediately. The first prototypes were built deep inside the Helios 9 shipyards. Advanced manufacturing systems were integrated directly into the vessels. Automated fabrication facilities, self-reconfiguring hardware, modular architecture, adaptive software. The ships weren't merely machines. They were platforms for continuous improvement. Every combat report automatically influenced future configurations. Every engagement produced upgrades. Every mission changed the fleet. Council observers, who eventually discovered fragments of the project, became alarmed. Not because of the technology itself, because of the philosophy behind it. For thousands of years, engineering focused on achieving perfection. Humanity focused on achieving improvement. The distinction appeared subtle. It wasn't. Perfection had limits. Improvement did not. The first evolution-class vessels entered service quietly. Officially, they were experimental prototypes. Unofficially, they represented the future. Then war accelerated their development. A new threat emerged beyond the frontier. Unlike previous enemies, this force possessed enormous industrial capacity, massive shipyards, huge populations, near-limitless resources. They couldn't match humanity's adaptability, but they could overwhelm opponents through numbers. The strategy was simple. Build more ships, lose more ships, eventually win. Council strategists feared the approach. Human commanders welcomed it, because large-scale warfare generated enormous amounts of data. And Project Evolution loved data. The first major test occurred in the Talon Expanse, a vast region containing dozens of contested systems. Enemy fleets advanced aggressively. Hundreds of battles erupted simultaneously. The situation appeared chaotic. To human engineers, it looked like a research opportunity. Evolution-class ships entered combat across the region. At first, they performed normally. Nothing unusual appeared. Enemy commanders saw standard human vessels. Then the adaptations began. One squadron discovered enemy shields, resisted plasma weapons effectively. Within days, updated weapon configurations spread across the fleet. Another battle revealed vulnerabilities in enemy sensor systems. Countermeasures appeared almost immediately. A third engagement exposed weaknesses in missile defense networks. New attack patterns emerged within hours. The process repeated continuously. Every encounter improved the fleet. Every battle made humanity stronger. Enemy commanders noticed the changes quickly. At first, they assumed coincidence. Then they suspected intelligence leaks. Eventually, they accepted the truth. Human ships were learning. The realization terrified them. Because no matter what strategy they employed, humanity adapted. Every success became temporary. Every advantage disappeared. Every lesson eventually belonged to humans. Then the enemy changed tactics. Instead of fighting humanity directly, they targeted infrastructure. Supply depots, refineries, communication hubs, shipyards. The strategy worked, at least initially. Several human logistics networks suffered severe damage. Production slowed. Resource shortages emerged. Council observers predicted disaster. Traditional military doctrines suggested retreat. Human engineers proposed something else: improvisation à gain. Across frontier systems, civilian industries joined the war effort. Mining corporations modified equipment for military production. Agricultural facilities manufactured replacement components. Commercial factories produced emergency supplies. Entire colonies reconfigured themselves within weeks. The enemy expected centralized logistics. Humanity responded with decentralized resilience. The more infrastructure they destroyed, the more distributed human production became. Every attack strengthened the system. The enemy couldn't understand it, because they still viewed engineering as structure. Humans viewed engineering as adaptation. Then came the breakthrough. The moment Project Evolution truly changed everything. A small human task force became trapped near the Vargo's Rift. Enemy fleets surrounded them. Escape appeared impossible. Destruction seemed inevitable. Council analysts predicted total loss. Instead, something extraordinary happened. During the engagement, Evolution-class ships began sharing battlefield modifications directly with one another. Not instructions, actual hardware designs. One vessel developed improved armor reinforcement. Nearby ships immediately manufactured identical upgrades. Another ship optimized drone deployment systems. The improvements spread through the formation. A third discovered superior electronic warfare techniques. Minutes later, the entire task force adopted them. The fleet wasn't merely learning anymore. It was evolving collectively, like a living organism. News of the event spread rapidly through military circles. Scientists were stunned. Engineers were fascinated. Politicians were horrified. Because humanity had effectively created a distributed intelligence network spanning entire fleets, no centralized command. No singular control system. Just continuous cooperation. Continuous adaptation. Continuous evolution. The implications were enormous. Every battle now accelerated human development. War itself became a catalyst for improvement. Enemy commanders faced an impossible situation. Every engagement strengthened humanity. Every conflict generated new innovations. Every attack produced new solutions. The longer the war continued, the stronger Earth became. Then intelligence reports revealed something disturbing. Very disturbing. Deep inside Council territory, a faction of traditionalists had begun organizing. Powerful admirals, senior industrial magnates, leaders who believed humanity represented a threat to galactic stability. Des yeux incontrôlables. And they had a plan. A secret coalition was forming. Not against external enemies, against humanity itself. Their goal was simple. Stop human influence before it transformed the galaxy forever. But they underestimated one thing. Human engineers weren't the only people changing. The galaxy was changing too. Young council scientists increasingly admired human innovation. Military officers studied human tactics. Independent worlds purchased human technology. Entire civilizations embraced adaptability. The old order was weakening. The traditionalists saw this as a crisis. Humanity saw it as progress. Neither side realized how quickly events were about to escalate. Because hidden beyond known space, an ancient signal had just been detected. A signal older than the Galactic Council, older than human civilization, older than recorded history itself. And whatever sent that signal had just awakened. For thousands of years, the Galactic Council believed they understood the history of the galaxy. They believed they were the oldest advanced civilization ever discovered. Humanity never fully accepted that claim. Human historians had learned a simple lesson throughout their own history. If evidence was missing, that didn't mean something never existed. It only meant nobody had found it yet. Then the signal arrived. It was first detected by a remote deep space listening station positioned beyond the frontier. At first, technicians assumed it was background radiation. Then they realized something impossible. The signal contained structure, patterns, mathematical sequences, artificial design. Someone knew something had created it. The discovery immediately triggered panic across scientific communities. Research stations began analyzing the transmission. Military intelligence classified the information. Council leadership assembled emergency meetings. Nobody could determine the source. The signal originated from a region of space considered completely empty, no stars, no planets, no colonies, or nothing. Yet the transmission was real. And it was old. Very old. When scientists calculated its age, the results shocked everyone. The signal predated the Galactic Council by millions of years. Even the oldest known civilizations had not existed when it was first transmitted. The implications were terrifying. Something ancient had once occupied the galaxy. Something technologically advanced. Something powerful enough to leave traces millions of years later. Council leaders reacted cautiously. Most wanted to ignore it. Others demanded further investigation. Humanity chose a different approach. They sent explorers. Because humans had always been curious, sometimes dangerously curious. A joint expedition fleet was assembled within weeks, scientists, engineers. military escorts, research vessels, all heading toward the source of the mysterious transmission. As the fleet traveled deeper into unexplored space, strange discoveries began appearing. Ancient debris fields, massive metallic fragments drifting between stars, structures too damaged to identify, evidence of a civilization long forgotten. The deeper they traveled, the stranger everything became. Then they found it. A colossal artificial object hidden inside a dark nebula. The structure was enormous, larger than entire cities, possibly larger than some moons. Its surface appeared ancient beyond imagination. Scars covered the metal, massive impacts, ancient damage, evidence of a war fought millions of years ago, and somehow, it was still transmitting. The signal that had crossed millions of years was coming from this structure. Human engineers stared at the scans in disbelief. Council scientists struggled to explain what they were seeing. Nothing in recorded history compared to it. Then, the structure did something unexpected. It activated. Ancient lights illuminated across its surface. Power systems began awakening. Systems that should have been dead for millions of years suddenly came alive. The entire expedition fleet fell silent. Because everyone understood the same thing. They had not discovered a ruin. They had discovered a machine, and after millions of years of silence, that machine had just noticed them. No one spoke. For several long seconds, the entire expedition fleet simply watched. The ancient structure continued awakening. Massive energy signatures flowed through systems that should have been dead for millions of years. Entire sections illuminated one after another. Gigantic towers emerged from the darkness. Hidden mechanisms rotated into position. Sensors across every ship suddenly overloaded. The object was generating more power than entire planetary civilizations. Human engineers couldn't believe the readings. Council scientists checked the numbers repeatedly. The results never changed. This thing wasn't merely ancient. It was advanced beyond anything the galaxy had ever built. Then the signal stopped. Abruptly, completely, that silence filled every communication channel. Moments later, a new transmission appeared. Not from the expedition fleet, from the structure itself. The message spread across every frequency simultaneously. Every language translator activated automatically. Every computer attempted to decode it. The first words froze everyone in place. Identity unknown. A pause followed. Then another message appeared. Galactic database not found. Confused looks spread across command centers. The machine was searching for something. Something that no longer existed. Millions of years had passed since its last activation. The civilizations it remembered were long gone. The stars themselves had changed. Then the machine asked a question. A single question that sent chills through every crew member. Has the war ended? No one knew how to respond. What war? Ufukdit. How large had it been? The structure offered no answers. Instead, massive sensor arrays began scanning the expedition fleet. Human ships, council ships, scientific vessels, everything. The Maflianaisat them. Compared them against records older than civilization itself. Then something unexpected happened. It focused on the human vessels, not the council ships. Not the scientists, not the military escorts. The humans. Alarms immediately sounded throughout the fleet. Several council commanders ordered defensive formations. Weapons systems activated. Human commanders remained cautious but calm. The machine wasn't attacking. It was observing, as if searching for something familiar. Minutes passed. Then another message arrived. Pattern detected. Nobody understood what that meant. Engineers reviewed data desperately. Scientists searched for explanations. No ne appareith. Then, the machine transmitted a massive archive directly toward the expedition. Millions of files. Ancient records. Historical databases. Star maps. Technological schematics. Enough information to transform galactic civilization overnight. The transfer lasted nearly an hour. When it ended them and firing. Simple. Direct. Terrifying. They are returning. The transmission repeated 3 times. Then the structure powered down. The lights vanished. The energy readings disappeared. Silence returned to the nebula. But the damage had already been done. Because every civilization in the galaxy now possessed the same terrifying question. Who were they? And why would a machine millions of years old be afraid of them? Far away, hidden within the newly received archives, human researchers were already uncovering answers. Answers that would reveal the truth about the ancient war, the fall of the first galactic civilization, and the enemy that had nearly erased all intelligent life from existence, an enemy that might still be out there, waiting, watching, and slowly moving back toward the galaxy once again. The archives changed everything. For weeks, research teams across the galaxy worked without rest. Ancient databases recovered from the machine contained more information than all known civilizations had gathered throughout their entire histories. Millions of records, millions of years of forgotten knowledge. The greatest mystery in galactic history was finally beginning to reveal itself. And the truth was far worse than anyone imagined. The Galactic Council was not the first great civilization. Not even close. Long before humanity. Long before the Council. Long before every known species. A civilization existed that spanned nearly the entire galaxy. Historians eventually gave them a simple name, the First Civilization. According to the archives, they achieved technological capabilities that seemed impossible. They controlled stars, moved planets, built artificial worlds, created machines capable of surviving millions of years. Their cities stretched across entire solar systems. Their scientific knowledge surpassed anything the modern galaxy possessed. For thousands of years, they prospered, believing themselves unstoppable, believing themselves eternal. Then they encountered something beyond the edge of known space. Something they did not understand. Something they could not control. The archives referred to it only by one title. The silence. No photographs existed. No clear descriptions survived, only battle reports. Emergency transmissions and warnings. Thousands upon thousands of warnings. The first civilization initially believed the silence was another rival empire. A new species, a military threat. They were wrong. The records described something far more terrifying. The silence did not causations, it erased them. Entire star systems vanished. Communication networks disappeared. Planets stopped responding. Fleets were lost without a trace. Every investigation ended the same way. Silence, no survivors, no explanations, only absence. At first, the losses appeared isolated. Then they accelerated. The first civilization launched enormous military campaigns. Millions of warships, planet-sized weapons. Technologies modern civilizations could barely comprehend. None of it worked. The archives became increasingly desperate. Entire sectors fell. Entire populations vanished. The greatest civilization in galactic history began collapsing. And then humanity discovered the most shocking detail of all, the final defense strategy. The last plan created by the first civilization before its destruction. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't a fleet. It wasn't technology. It was an idea. The ancient records repeatedly referenced a concept called adaptive survival theory, a philosophy developed during the final years of the war. According to surviving scientists, every advanced civilization shared the same weakness: optimization. Perfection. Predictability. The stronger they became, the more rigid they became. The more efficient they became, the less adaptable they became. When confronted by an unknown threat, they couldn't change quickly enough. They broke. The theory proposed a radical solution. Civilizations should never become perfect. They should remain adaptable, flexible, creative, unpredictable. Reading the archives, human scientists exchanged nervous glances. Because of familiarity, the realization spread rapidly. The first civilization had discovered the same lesson humans learned naturally. Perfection wasn't survival, adaptation was survival. Suddenly, many events made sense. The machine's strange interest in humanity, its focus on human ships, its repeated scans. It wasn't studying technology, it was studying behavior. The machine had been searching for evidence that adaptive survival theory succeeded. And humanity represented the proof. News spread across the galaxy. Council worlds reacted with disbelief. Engineers reviewed human history. Military leaders analyzed human wars. Scientists studied human innovation. Again and again, they found the same pattern. Humans never stopped adapting, never stopped improvising, never stopped changing. What the Council considered flaws had become strengths. What human engineers considered common sense might be the reason civilization still existed. Then another discovery emerged from the archives. A star mapped ancient, incomplete, but terrifying. The map contained thousands of markers representing the advance of the Silence during the ancient war. Most markers ended millions of years ago, except one. One signal remained active, still moving, still approaching. Researchers calculated its trajectory. The room fell silent. The object wasn't heading away from the galaxy. It was heading toward it, slowly, relentlessly. And according to the calculations, it would arrive. Nobody knew exactly what the Silence was. Nobody knew how powerful it remained. Nobody knew whether the ancient threat even remembered the galaxy existed. But one fact became impossible to ignore. Something was coming. The Galactic Council immediately called an emergency summit. For the first time in history, every major civilization attended. Political rivals, military enemies, ancient competitors. Everyone. The meeting lasted weeks. Arguments erupted constantly. Fear spread everywhere. Some demanded massive fleets, others demanded new weapons. Others wanted evacuation plans. Then humanity presented its recommendation. The proposal shocked everyone. Humans didn't suggest building a perfect defense. They suggested building an adaptable one. Shared technology, shared knowledge, shared innovation. A civilization capable of changing faster than any threat could predict. The room remained silent. Because deep down, everyone knew the truth. The Council's old philosophy had failed repeatedly. Humanity's philosophy had not. Months later, construction began across thousands of worlds, joint shipyards, joint research stations, joint engineering projects. For the first time in galactic history, civilizations worked together as equals. Not because humanity forced them, because reality forced them. Far beyond known space, hidden among ancient stars, something continued moving through the darkness. The same threat that destroyed the first civilization. The same threat that terrified a machine capable of surviving millions of years. The same threat whose arrival had been predicted by forgotten archives. And somewhere inside the darkness, something received a signal. A signal transmitted from the ancient machine. A signal announcing that intelligent life still existed in the galaxy. The darkness responded. For the first time in millions of years, it changed course, directly toward humanity. Because the galaxy had finally found hope. And hope had just made itself visible. The end, or the beginning. The ancient machine warned the galaxy. Humanity united it. But what if the Silence isn't a civilization? What if it's something far older than life itself? And why did it change course the moment it detected humans? Next story. The Silence arrived and asked for humanity by Irongeist HFY.